Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Larry's Anything Goes. Hope you guys are having a great week. I am back in uptight country, Northern Virginia, but hey, it's a temporary situation. Can't wait to back to the West Coast, and I will be heading to the West Coast this Sunday, so life is good. But anyways, enough about that. Today we're going to be talking about a very iconic individual known as Damon Dash. Now, a lot of people know Damon Dash for just his relationship with Jay-Z and Kevin Hart, but there's so much more to Damon Dash, and I'm not really just going to talk about his accomplishments, but I'm just going to talk about his actual mentality and the mentality that he's surrounded by and why he's such a success in my eyes and obviously in the public's eyes all at the same time. You know, most people know that he was born in Harlem, New York, put himself through prep school when he was in high school, so he wanted to get a renowned education and perspective outside of the neighborhood that he grew in and outside of the people who were getting the regular public education that they were getting at the time. And he knew that one thing coming out of high school is that he wanted to be different. He knew he was different. He wanted to be different and live different. And he knew one thing that a lot of us did not know coming out of high school. He did not want to have a job, and he always wanted to be successful, and he always wanted to be, quote unquote, what he calls a boss. His portfolio is known for being in the music industry, really starting off, to getting kick-started off his entrepreneurial lifestyle, and he managed a lot of acts, and one of the biggest acts he ever managed was Jay-Z, managed Cameron. The list goes on and on. They had a record label known as Rockefeller. He sold that record label eventually to the Def Jam Records, and then he went on to various forms of fashion. I remember the first fashion that clothing line that he had was Rockefeller back when I was Rockaware. And I remember wearing Rockaware when I was back in high school. He's known of having his own alcoholic beverages, Armadale vodka, Pro Kids alcoholic beverages, you know, things of that nature. He's an actor. He's made multiple movies. You know, not only has he acted himself, but he's actually made his own movies, produced his own movies, executive producer. He is, quote unquote, a boss. One of the main reasons why I have this picture up here, stop caring about what others think, is because we have a world and a culture that we live in where people consistently care about what other people think about them, from the way that they wear their hair, their skin, their clothes, everything, the car, the house they live in, everything. People live in such a crazy world where they really care about what everybody thinks about them, and it just makes me laugh on a regular basis. So I love that. This definitely says everything about him, because he is who he is, and he's become what he is today, not just because of having the right people around him, but for the most part not really giving a damn about what anybody else thinks about him. And if I think more and more people had that mindset, then more and more people would be more successful in their life all at the same time. You know, when I was a teenager, I particularly didn't care for Damon Dash. You know, I was a fan of Jay-Z's music, but I really wasn't a fan of Damon Dash. And the main reason why is because of his aggressive personality. Now, I'm not from New York. I got family from the New York, Connecticut, Jersey area. And I know that in the Northeast, it's a little bit more of an aggressive culture up there. Nothing wrong with that. And being aggressive and abrasive about specific situations is just a regular thing for a lot of people up there. Not everybody, because it's easy to generalize people because they come from a specific area, but he comes from that aggressive culture and aggressive lifestyle. Nothing wrong with that. As an adult, I'm like, okay, well, he just appears confident. He's ready to get down to business. He's not with all this fluff nonsense that a lot of people love to have, especially when you work for somebody. When something could come across and be explained within 10 to 15 words, usually on a job they want you to write down or explain it in a dissertation between 40 to 50 words, when you should have been able to get to the point on the dot. Get down to business. I love that about Damon Dash. I love that about people like him, because I'm the same way. And that's really the only kind of people I want to deal with. And I would imagine any other successful business person would want to deal with the same kind of people, but I know it varies with different cultures, especially a lot of times if you go to other countries. so I've been told and read about. It's all about formalities, so you can't just get right down to the point. People want to know about your business, they want to know about your family, they want to know about how you grew up, your educational background. They want to really get personal with you. We're here in America. You just want to get down to the what's in it for me. How's it going to benefit you? How's it going to benefit me? And then let's move forward. Because essentially that is what business is. At the end of the day, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. How's it going to benefit me? How's it going to benefit you? And you go from there. So, anyways, back to the story. Because the beautiful thing I love about Damon Dash is he simplifies things to how it should be from an entrepreneurial standpoint. The way he explains it, mostly anybody can get it for the most part. And like I said, he cuts out that fluff. And he even says and explains one thing today is, like, when he was coming up, there was always a middleman. But because of so much technology nowadays and how connected the world is nowadays, you can set your business up to the point where there is essentially no middleman. You are collecting most of the money, but you just have to do more on the groundwork. But because of technology, you have more access to cut out the middleman, and I just think that's awesome. Yeah. And he talks about another beautiful thing is he just when he explains the entrepreneurial mindset, he just breaks it down to these simple levels. And I think the best time the way he explained it was when he was on the Breakfast Club. And essentially he just I'm throwing my own little example out here, but essentially he said it like this: if I have $100, I put it in the streets. So meaning, if he has $100, he puts it into an asset, a project, a business, and if he makes $500 to $1,000 off of it, then he takes that same amount of money, or takes at least 80 to 90% of that money, and he puts it into another business, into another project. Great example: if he makes money off of a movie, he makes another movie, and then it makes another movie, or then buys another project. Opens up another clothesline. The list goes on and on and on. It's a merry-go-round. It's a constant merry-go-round. That is the concept that he explains being an entrepreneur, because that's essentially what being an entrepreneur is. Any entrepreneur you look at, that's what an entrepreneur does successfully. He states that it's not cool to have a job. I love that. It's a rarity you hear that kind of language coming from anybody saying it's not cool to have a job. He says it. It's not cool to have a job. I don't think you should even you shouldn't respect yourself if you have a job, because he's never had a job. He's like, because your world is centered around another person, whether it's a man or a female, what they expect out of you at the end of the day. Now he says it's cool to have a job, but just don't center your world around having a job. Open yourself to having more options. I'm with that program 100%. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a job like he says, but I do think that you should never, in today's economy and definitely in tomorrow's economy, center your world around a job, because those days are over and dead. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. Be your own boss. The only way to be your own boss is to either have your own business or have stake in another business. It's a very simple equation. The hardest part of that is the execution. It's easier said than done. The execution factor of owning your own business is the hardest part, but it's better for you to put that kind of time and energy into something like that instead of putting that time and energy constantly on a job. It's just something to think about. It's just something to think about. And then the thing is, he's like, because he brings the equation, Damon Dash brings the equation of thinking like a boss, even if you are an employee, thinking like a boss, because everybody knows that thinking like an employee and a boss is two different mindsets. And I will get back to that later, but I want to hit on this one note. He says another thing: saving money is for suckers. Now, when I first heard that, I'm just like, well, wait a minute. We all got to be able to save money every now and then, have a rainy day fund and things of that nature. But he says, okay, well, if you have a rainy day fund, we'll have it in another business. If you got all your money tied into assets and one asset dries up, you have 5. So say if you have 6 assets and one or two of those assets dry up, you have between 4 to 5 assets left, still bringing money in. So he's like, just leaving money in the bank is for suckers. And I do agree with that on 100%, because I say this and everybody else says this. Now, I'm not making this up as I go along. Money is used for 2 things: survival and to work for you. You need money to survive, eat, live, and drink. All that good stuff. then you need money to work for you as an employee, because money never sleeps. I've said it before and I'll say it 1,000 times more. It's supposed to work for you. And the only way money can work for you if it's tied into assets. If it's tied into crap that's not producing anything for you except entertainment or something to that effect, then it's not really working for you. It's just that simple. Okay, money's supposed to work for you. Now, go back to the worker's mindset compared to the boss's mindset. When you work for an employer, no matter who you work for, unless it's a family business that's a part of your family, so therefore it means you have an asset, you have stake in the company, so therefore the company is your asset. I'm not talking about those kinds of people. I'm talking about people who are getting up and working at Walmart, working for a government agency, working for Google, working for somebody else that you don't have any ownership in. Even if you have stocks and bonds under that company, doesn't matter. You don't own it, your name's not on it, you don't get the tax benefits from being the owner. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about workers. And there's nothing wrong with being a worker, because I am a worker. So that's what I said. Let me be clear about who I'm talking about. Okay, workers. Mindset. When you're on a job, is to do your job. No matter if you're blue collar, white collar, does not matter. You have a job to compete, you get paid for those specific amount of hours because it's considered earned income. You do your 8 to 10, 12 hours a day shift, and then you go home. Okay. And depending on the circumstances, you might have to work some overtime, so you get paid a little bit more, but you're a lot more exhausted. Now, when you're on a job, usually the training that you have to get to even get the job, whether it's skilled trade or whether it's a college degree or some sort of a certification, that knowledge and skill set is utilized for the employer to benefit more off of you. You benefit from getting the paycheck and possibly learning more other skill sets, but all those skill sets are usually going to be tied into the job, the company, the organization, the government organization, etc. and so forth. It's not going to be tied into your future, into what you want to do outside of that, because a lot of times it's a job trains your mind to constantly stay focused on what the primary objective of that company or that government organization wants, not what you want. Now, you can, of course, have your own side hustles, which is definitely the best way to go. So you utilize the money that you make from that job to put it in to survive and to put it into your side hustles and then form your own business. But for the most part, you're usually not going to be on a job working for an organization, and they're going to give you entrepreneurial skill sets so that you can become that company's competition. Because it's not in that company's best interest for you to become their competition. They want you to be trained as a worker, not a boss. Even if you're a manager or general manager, you're a boss of employees, but you are not a boss according to the Damon Dash standards, and even to my standards, because you're not calling the shots of the actual company and organization. You're not the CEO. You're not part business owner. You're not receiving the tax breaks from being a business owner. So therefore, you are not a boss under the Damon Dash categories. I call it being a boss. It's very simple. Now, when you're on your off time, it's in your best interest to gain enough business, boss, entrepreneurial skills as much as possible, because you can become a great employee first, which most people end up doing, and then have an interest in becoming a great boss at the end of the day. Let that be your primary objective, and then you can move along with and put that same training into your children, just like immigrants used to do and still do when they come to the United States, and let the mindset continuously flourish from there. You know, let the end game be being a boss, even if you can't start off as a boss. That's what Damon Dash says. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's awesome. You know, it's like. And another great thing I like about Damon Dash is he doesn't spend a lot of time doing the whole gossip thing. He's like, I remember hearing him on the Breakfast Club. He said, you know, I don't talk or listen to chatty Cathys. And that's what majority of our national media has turned into. That's what a lot of adults have turned into. They're constantly gossiping about what somebody else says and what somebody else does, so what somebody else tweeted, what somebody else posted. Who cares? I know I don't, because gossip does nothing for me. Does nothing for Larry Patterson at the end of the day. And I know for the most part doesn't do anything for you worrying about what somebody else is doing. One thing I love about Damon Dash, he says, I don't count another man's money. I don't worry about another man's money. I worry about my own money. I count my own money. I'm with that program. And we need to get back to that, you know, in this country and in this world, worrying about counting our stuff and worrying about our own stuff instead of worrying about everybody else's stuff. But that's just really a personal note on that one, you know. And essentially, he says, Damon Dash, having a job and just counting on that job is a death sentence. And he just really wants to put in the mind frame of people, especially young people, you know, do not buy the hype that you have to be consistently dependent on people. Become independent. Damon Dash has done a great job of making everybody around him independent and not dependent. He made Jay-Z independent. He made Cameron independent. He made Kevin Hart independent. And he allowed these people to invest in themselves. He invested in them and taught them how to invest in themselves in order for them to become the bosses that they are today. Love them or hate them, the people I just mentioned, Damon Dash, Kevin Hart, Jay-Z, they are bosses, and their futures are in their own hands, because not only the amount of money that they make, but because of the boss moves they made with the money that they've made. It's a very simple concept. It's just the execution part is the hardest part. And that's what I love about Damon Dash. Not only is he straightforward, but he's more focused on making people independent instead of dependent, because that's what jobs do. They want you to be dependent on them, because if you become independent of them, you become their competition. So if you're in an environment where work is always discussed, independence is not discussed, then 10 to 15 years down the road, if you're still in that specific environment, if you're still a part of that specific culture, because that's what everything is. Everything is a culture. Everything is. And I'm not talking about ethnic culture. I'm just talking about culture in general. Being an entrepreneur and the boss and the business person is a culture. Being an employee is a culture. And if you're not willing to change your mindset, change your vision, then you will not receive new results. You will just go to work your 40 to 60 hours a week, pay your bills, go on a vacation every now and then. And then when you come back from your vacation, you will be back to square one once again. It's that simple. It's really that simple. And that's the one thing I like about Damon Dash, because he talks about that kind of education. A lot of it is self-taught. A lot of it is mentorship when it comes to entrepreneurialism, when it comes to being a boss in business. But it's a lot of education outside of the business mindset and the business world, the job world, education. And it's all about surrounding yourself and immersing yourself in that culture, because culture is everything at the end of the day. And if you're surrounded by the wrong culture, then therefore, in a sense, you're just going to end up being, and your life is going to go in that direction of that specific culture. And at the end of the day, the choice is up to you. But I leave it at this, that's one of the main reasons why I admire Damon Dash as a person, as an entrepreneur, great family man. And he's even instilled these same values in his children, and all of his children are independent and they're bosses. They own their own cookie line, they own their own restaurants, they're doing their own things because it was the way that he taught them how to be. It is a mindset. You change your mindset, you change your world. But if you just have a mindset of an employee just looking for another job and getting a promotion, then that's all you're going to end up getting. But if you change your mindset to saying, I'm done with this and I want to own something and profit from it, even if I don't become rich off of it, but I can live off of it, and that's good enough for me. Because for me, that's good enough for me. And if it morphed into something else, then great. So change your mindset, change the world. Hope you guys liked the video. Give it a thumbs up. Please share, and please subscribe. Take care.